We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
It may seem a bit dramatic to compare nuclear weapons with AI-generated art, but I assure you the comparison is apt. I believe we're in trouble. Big trouble. We have unleashed a technology that even in its infancy is causing us to challenge not just a singular industry, but the core of human expression itself. AI art, at its most advanced, has the potential to dramatically change the course of human history. It all depends on where we steer it, and whether we choose to chain this Leviathan or let it free. 2 years ago, I made this statement in a video that mentioned, among other things, the future of AI art. Artificial intelligence in the future will have the capacity to outperform humans in art on a technical, objective level. And when that happens, we may still have abstraction, stylization, and emotional resonance to keep artists afloat for a few more decades. But when AI eventually gets so good that we aren't able to distinguish human art from computer art, I don't even know what's going to happen. Some people called me an idiot for saying this. They said it would never happen. Even then, I thought it was a little far-fetched. But now I realize I was in fact overly conservative in my estimates. I think the lesson to be learned from this is we need to stop with the never statements. As far as I'm concerned, no one should be confidently saying anything will never happen when it comes to artificial intelligence. Some things can be unlikely. Some things can take lots of time, more time than within our lives. But never? It's time we stopped being so sure of ourselves. If you think AI can never replace your job, never be good enough to fool you, or never become indistinguishable from a human mind, if you think AI will never be able to figure out every detail of your personality and every desire you have, and will never be able to generate a lifetime of customized experience after customized experience until you succumb to a prison of pleasure served on a perfectly modeled and rendered silver plate, I've got some tough news for you. No one has the slightest idea what will never happen. The news around this technology is developing day by day. The information on this subject is vast. At the very least, events of the future are going to contradict what I say in this video. That's why, unlike my other videos, I will be splitting this one into parts. I'm doing this because as soon as this video is out, new information will arise. I'll be able to digest topics and research more easily, and I'll be able to see feedback from the community before I move on to the next part. Regardless, I will be attempting to be cautious with everything I say, and my cautious take is this. Artists seriously need to pay attention to AI art. This is not something to scoff at. The future of all artists depends on it. Computers may one day replace us, but before that happens, you can always make your internet experience better before the impending doom. This video is sponsored by Atlas VPN. Atlas VPN is a digital tool that encrypts your internet traffic and hides your location whenever you browse the web. This makes it more difficult for pesky third parties to track your online activities and steal data. Right now, Atlas VPN is running a big discount. You can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. But you better hurry. Atlas VPN is supported on all devices, is easy to use, and has one of the more tolerable corporate art styles. Mr. Blueberry Man and Elongated Grape Man or whatever will help you with whatever data needs you have, such as a data breach monitor, where you can put in your email and Atlas VPN will search the web and see if your email has been used in any scams or breaches. One of the more intriguing features of Atlas VPN is access to regional content. Want to see what people are watching on Netflix in Poland? Well, you can. Or better yet, if you want to access content that is not available in your country, you can change your location. I've used a lot of VPNs before, and boy, this sure is one of them. Once again, if you hurry now, you can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.99 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Link in the description.
Jesse.
The drawing machine by John Revilius is a harmonograph. It enables people who can't draw to make pretty pictures. Anybody who has a visual idea but has no talent for drawing can use the computer.
This machine was shown at the 1968 exhibition Cybernetic Serendipity. This exhibition was held so long ago in terms of technological history. The photos taken were all black and white, and the invitations and admission tickets had to be written out on a manual typewriter. The things shown and said then at Cybernetic Serendipity seemed so quaint, but at the same time, prophetic. The exhibition focused on computer and machine-made artworks and music, constructed not just by artists, but also by composers, engineers, and mathematicians. In the late 1950s, kinetic sculptor Jean Tinguely created several metamatics, drawing machines that produced their own abstract artworks, thus removing the hand of the artist from ever touching the paper. Tinguely provided 2 painting machines to this exhibition, which visitors could activate, choose the color, the position of the pen, and the length of time the machine operated. His machines drew on Dada traditions and were often deliberately noisy and moved haphazardly. Many have considered these machines to be a powerful satire of artistic production in the machine age. Their inelegant automation and clumsiness highlights the limitations and the arrogance of trying to mechanize every aspect of our lives. The machines in this exhibition, though simple as they seem, spurred the imaginations of its visitors. Those faraway possibilities showcased then are now our reality. I want everyone to understand something. The word simple cannot be used to describe this situation. The host of ethical and legal issues that AI art introduces to the world is beyond complicated. The questions that can be asked are vast, and the answers that can be given are tiny. The best I can do is to focus on one topic at a time. So, I choose to emphasize first and foremost this question: is AI art theft? First, we're going to have to clarify what is meant by AI art and what is meant by theft. It's important that we're accurate in the words we use and the concepts we understand, as being accurate with our information is half the battle in an age of constant propaganda. One of the most common misunderstandings is that AI art programs generate art by taking an artwork, storing it, and reproducing it in the exact same state, or by taking multiple artworks and combining pieces of them into some sort of complicated collage, or by averaging multiple artworks together. This is usually incorrect and does not represent how these systems are designed. The actual process is much more complicated, and I implore everyone to get at least a basic understanding of how current systems work. I would recommend these videos that go into the technical and conceptual details of the technology. If you want to know an extremely simplified version of what is happening with programs like Stable Diffusion, here's a summary. First, a dataset must be gathered. This is done either by somehow finding enough of your own data, or by scraping the internet and collecting millions, if not billions, of image and text pairs which will be analyzed. This scraping is not done live, and is instead collected every few months or so. Next, machine learning will then use this data to learn the similarities and differences that make up an image, even if they don't make sense to humans. These dimensions are associated with key words, which it can match with the words in a given text prompt. In a sense, the AI is breaking images down to the smallest conception it can, the pixels and relationships between pixels. This space where these mathematical dimensions are assigned to these properties is called the latent space. Next is diffusion. Diffusion is trained by starting out with an image, then random Gaussian noise is applied to it in steps until full noise is achieved. The process is then reversed, and the machine learns which noise should be gradually diffused or removed from an image. By doing this many times with many images, it can learn how to remove noise from random seeds for new compositions, using the text prompt as the guide. There are many instances of automatic tools that can aid in the art-making process. Just know that we are not talking about some sort of crazy filter or an advanced collage. When I mean AI art, I mean this process. So what do we mean by theft? All these systems need data, and they need lots of it. To get this data, millions if not billions of images are scraped from publicly accessible data on the internet in a currently legal process. The most valuable data are images with accompanying descriptive text. The latest and greatest source for this data, the dataset that helped train Stable Diffusion and Google Imagen, is Laion 5B, compiled by the nonprofit Laion. Laion 5B is an open-source dataset containing 5.8 billion image-text pairs scraped from the internet. Laion 5B uses files obtained from Common Crawl, a nonprofit 501 organization which completely crawls the entire internet, including websites like DeviantArt and Pinterest. In this data are several things. Andy Baio and Simon Willison searched through one of the smaller Laion datasets and discovered some of the most frequently found captioned artists in it, and that the top artist in this list was Thomas Kinkade. Oh Thomas, why does your weird legacy keep showing up? Other, less amusing things have been found in the Laion dataset, including pornography, non-consensual pornography, violent content, and private medical records. When questioned about this type of content, every data-gathering organization says roughly the same thing. Those images were simply gathered from publicly available data, and we have filters for abusive content, but they are not perfect. Using the website haveibeentrained.com, you can discover if any images you have created have been used in Laion 5B and Laion 400M, and flag them for removal in any future AI training. The big problem is ultimately no one has curated these datasets. You simply cannot sift through 5.8 billion images very easily or quickly. Because of this, the origins and intellectual property rights of the data sources are largely unknown. What is known is that AI art programs such as Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and Google Imagen have been confirmed to use copyrighted images in their datasets. The very first question under Laion's frequently asked questions concerns whether their dataset respects copyright laws. Laion datasets are simply indexes to the internet, lists of URLs to the original images together with the alt text found linked to those images. While we downloaded and calculated clip embeddings of the pictures to compute similarity scores between pictures and text, we subsequently discarded all the photos. This is the rationale you'll find behind these companies. It's difficult to blame them on anything because they'll simply point to the hyperlinks that have the unethical materials. And simply put, linking to things is not infringing copyright. Now, as OpenAI has admitted, sometimes their AI does reproduce images instead of creating new ones. This is called overfitting, and it is not the goal of these systems. According to OpenAI, these regurgitated images were almost all simple vector graphics, and these vector graphics had many near duplicates in the dataset, such as a clock with arms at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, etc. So the machine would memorize this particular clock's appearance and reproduce it when prompted. A process of deduplication of the data had to be performed, which OpenAI claims has fixed the problem. This is why very famous images can seemingly be recreated perfectly by the AI, because there are so many duplicates of them put into its training data that it can copy it almost exactly. It is unclear exactly how often this happens, but in Stable Diffusion, putting in the name of a specific artist or painting can produce nearly the same image that exists in the training set. Duplication of images in training data is not the only culprit that results in overfitting, but it is a big one. One paper found that 1.9% of the random generations in their tests using Stable Diffusion and a smaller dataset copied training data, which could easily be more in Stable Diffusion, other models, and with the larger dataset, but it's hard to extrapolate these findings with certainty. Just remember that in posts like these, it's unlikely this is memorization as a result of typing in a prompt. This is likely using image to image, which makes the AI simply alter the image slightly, which is no different from regular art theft by just using Photoshop to alter an image slightly. The blame in this instance would be more appropriately aimed at the user rather than the AI. Making the claim that the input phase of the AI art generation process is copyright infringement or is not copyright infringement cannot be said definitively as it stands. In the United States, the application of fair use allows limited use of copyright works without the consent of the author. For example, in the case of Google's massive book scanning project, copyright lawyer Aaron Moss argues, AI tools aren't copying images so much to access their creative expression as to identify patterns in the images and captions. In addition, the original images scanned into those databases, unlike Google's display of book snippets, are never shown to end users. This arguably makes the use of copyrighted works by OpenAI and Stability AI even more transformative than Google Book Search. At the end of the day, generally, the machine learning phase is copying large amounts of data to produce something different. But transformation is only one part of fair use. For example, the effect of the use upon the potential market for the copyrighted work must also be considered. If you can't see how creating hundreds or thousands of works that mimic an artist's style and identity almost exactly might impact their future income, well, you might want to start paying attention. Furthermore, copyright lawyer Neil Turkowitz points out that in order to permit authorized use of copyrighted works to train AI, this use must satisfy 3 conditions to be an exception from required rights compatible with international law. 1. Exceptions must apply only in certain special cases. 2. Exceptions must not conflict with the normal exploitation of a work. And 3. Exceptions must not unreasonably prejudice the legitimate interests of the author. Again, as you can imagine, having your artwork, your creative labor, unknowingly fed into a machine to mass-produce works in your style, thereby directly competing with your own work, might prejudice the legitimate interests of the author. To Turkowitz, the unauthorized use of copyrighted works to train AI fails all 3. Meaning, if the US ruled that commercial uses of AI art would fall under fair use, it could be in conflict with its international legal obligations. As of today, no US court has ruled whether the input phase of training AI constitutes fair use. But do not take that as a comfort. There is certainly a case to be made for fair use in support of machine learning researchers. That's just the inputs. The outputs can obviously produce all kinds of copyright infringing works, just like if you tried to sell a t-shirt with a copyrighted character made by hand. The US Copyright Office recently approved the copyright of a comic mostly made out of AI-generated assets, Zarya of the Dawn, an 18-page comic book full of the usual clunky uncanniness that AI is known for. This registration was then reversed because, quote, copyright under US law requires human authorship. The office will not knowingly grant registration to a work that was claimed to have been created solely by machine with artificial intelligence, although this outcome is not final just yet. Now, this doesn't mean artworks that use AI art elements can never be copyrighted. As long as there is enough human authorship that transforms the work, it may be able to gain copyright protection. For now, it has been established that an AI cannot hold any form of intellectual property right as it is not a human. And, like we've already discussed, since there is no direct legal precedent for AI art training, I have no doubt that copyright law is going to be taking quite a spin over the next few years. The question, is AI art theft, is, in my opinion, quite emotionally loaded and vague for this discussion. A better question would be, is the training of AI fair use? Keep in mind, fair use is an incredibly tricky piece of the law. In fact, it isn't a law, it's a guideline, a test used for helping courts make decisions. However, if we focus on the amount of work that is used, the purpose of using this work, and the market effect these outputs could have, in my opinion, I would lean towards no. Because AI cannot be compared with art forms that legitimately implement fair use. AI is in a league on its own. And I think that's self-evident by the dramatically different process that AI artists use compared to traditional artists. Even photography and collage requires certain limitations that are not nearly as present in AI art. Of course, dance diffusion must also be mentioned in this equation. Dance diffusion is an AI music program, also made by Stability AI and why do they name these things like this?
Harmony.
Also made by Stability AI and Harmony. In this now infamous article is this passage. Dance diffusion is also built on datasets composed entirely of copyright-free and voluntarily provided music and audio samples. Because diffusion models are prone to memorization and overfitting, releasing a model trained on copyrighted data could potentially result in legal issues. In honoring the intellectual property of artists while also complying to the best of their ability with the often strict copyright standards of the music industry, keeping any kind of copyrighted material out of training data was a must. When I was first made aware of this in Steven Zapata's video, I was shocked by how such a blatant double standard could exist within a company. Suspiciously so. So, I emailed the author of the article. It turns out the information in this article is paraphrased from this interview between Weights and Biases and HOHENHEIM.
Just because, I don't want to put out a model that is going to be trained on a bunch of copyrighted data and spit it back out. That would be, bad from a copyright perspective. That would be bad legally. That would be bad science. That just wouldn't be a very good model if it's overfitting memorizing things. And because these models can be susceptible to memorization, I haven't released any models trained on copyrighted data that I would be concerned about. Things that's held back music machine learning is just music copyright is something you don't want to go up against.
They also went on to say this.
Eventually, I would love to have a model that is trained on all known music, and we can say, give me 50% Bruno Mars, 50% Beethoven, whatever. That'd be great. That would be so fun to play around with.
And this.
We can actually we have terabytes of stuff that we can train on legally already.
Telly Davies, the author of the article, could not give an answer on why Stability AI and HOHENHEIM was highlighting their avoidance of copyrighted material for dance diffusion, where they didn't do the same with stable diffusion. She surmised that HOHENHEIM is just kind of left to do their own thing for the most part, so Stability AI's way of operation, in terms of copyright handling, might differ. It is very obvious that the legal power of the music industry is more vicious than that of individual artists. I'm not sure if this inconsistency is exactly because Stability AI knows they can get away with using imagery and not music, or simply because their policies are fragmented and confused, or a little bit of both. In the end, it doesn't really matter. Only the outcomes matter. My guess on why AI developers did not just use non-copyrighted images in the first place is that, while AI models may still have been functional with copyright-free images, the results might not have been as dramatic or impressive. Even being as charitable as possible to all of these organizations, I think most would agree things are moving way too rapidly. Our understandings of these datasets, legal copyright concerns, and ethical concerns are simply not developed enough for most to be comfortable simply pressing the gas pedal on everything. Thinking beyond copyright, the simple fact of the matter is these AI systems could not exist without the work of other artists. As Turkowitz puts it, those reproductions of expression, however temporary, are the raw materials used for the development of new forms of expression. In other words, AI isn't just inspired by the work it ingests, it owes its very existence to them. This is how I would approach the situation, not just legally, but with an emphasis on ethics. Although AI doesn't usually copy images it is trained on verbatim, it can copy art styles incredibly well. I would say it's more than capable of ripping off artist styles. There have been many instances of AI copying the art styles of artists when people have deliberately written that artist's name into the prompts. But you can't copyright styles either, so we can't approach that legally. It's all about ethics. I think this is the winning point to emphasize. The fact that a monolithic machine, vast beyond the capabilities of any individual artist, can be trained on the works of that artist, take their identity and style, and reproduce something in that identity and style without the artist's consent or knowledge, to the point where it can cause confusion with that artist's own works, with rampant potential for market disruption, is wrong. And anyone who advocates for AI art should at the very least recognize that for many artists, this is upsetting and a very real possibility. The argument that is trotted out every time this is brought up is that AI is simply using references, just like the human mind uses references from existing artists. This argument is not entirely without merit philosophically. The process of AI art generation, from what I gathered, is more similar to the process of how a human artist operates than it is to a machine that has no capacity for spontaneity, but the systems at their core are still very different. For one, AI and individual artists work at vastly different scales. One artist in their entire lifetime would only be able to study a few thousand images, whereas an AI would be looking at millions, if not billions of images. The AI makes thousands of statistical calculations and weighs probabilities. It is not creative, nor is it intelligent in the same way a human mind is. AI may make mistakes we recognize as analogous to human mistakes, such as messing up hands, but it also makes mistakes that are completely stupid and no human would ever make, like signing works with blended signatures because that's what paintings usually have, or misunderstanding how an object is constructed so it can exist in a world with gravity. This is the difference between vast, unfathomable machines controlled by for-profit companies and the incredibly limited referencing capabilities of your average human artist, who is unlikely to mimic the styles of thousands of artists and produce rip-off art in massive quantities to the point it could replace those artists from which they referenced. It must also be mentioned that, also unlike humans, getting AI to forget is tough. In fact, there is an entire field of study dedicated to this called machine unlearning. If your data has already been used, it cannot be unlearned easily without affecting the model's performance. You could, of course, train the model without the training data that needs to be unlearned, but this is very expensive. You could also simply kill the model using algorithmic disgorgement, a foolproof method which destroys the entire program, meaning AI companies would have to start from scratch. You may understand why they might not want to do this. The message that everyone on the internet should repeat is this: those who develop AI should do so in the most legal and ethical way possible. AI systems and the value they create cannot exist without the data of artists' work. Therefore, artists should be compensated and asked for their permission before the work is used. AI developers should at the very least give them the option to opt in voluntarily, not opt out before they are automatically collected. There is either a way where a ton of people are exploited for a replacement, or there is a way where a ton of people are given proper compensation and warning to produce a very useful tool. Which one do AI developers want to pick? It seems that people who are invested in these technologies have already made up their minds. In this telling interview, Midjourney's founder, David Holes, told Forbes they just kind of gave up when it came to getting consent from artists for copyrighted works. Furthermore, here is a tweet from the executive chair for Stability AI that gives you a general idea of the philosophy of some of these tech leaders. If you want to win when producing innovative technology, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. It's riskier, but it can catapult you to the top. True innovation unsettles people, inviting strong pushback. The article linked comes to this conclusion: we're very fortunate that so far the people who have built these models seem to be generally ethical people. Unfortunately, the current incentives are such that anyone who is willing to open things up faster and with less restrictions will win an advantage. As a huge fan of this space, I'm supremely excited to see what happens with these technologies. Morally, it's upsetting that less caution and fewer restrictions might win the day. This kind of argument falls in line with another frequent argument, which is the idea that other countries such as China or Russia may develop AI systems with less restrictions, and thus have a temporal advantage over the supposed ethical shackles with which we lock ourselves up in, as if this was an artistic arms race. I find these kinds of appeals frustrating for two reasons. One, if we don't do it, someone else will, is not a good foundation for ethical behavior. Other people could develop all kinds of technology quicker in all kinds of bad ways. At what point can you draw the line if this is your justification? 2. Cautious and ethical systems could have been developed from the very beginning. They just weren't because some AI developers probably knew images were not as ferociously litigated. Some probably did not see the ethical pitfalls. And some probably genuinely believed this would be a tool that would do nothing but help artists. But there is also another reason. Watching this interview on the Proco channel with Evan Conrad was fascinating, especially for this clip.
A lot of these projects are not made by maybe standard moneyed interests. They're made by people who legitimately think they are building utopia. And I'm relatively confident that they are building at least something very large that might lead to utopia. They are quite confident that they are building AGI, and that's probably true. And when you are that confident that you are building the most important technology in the world, it's just not your motivator anymore. When you're really, really confident that the thing that's going to happen is that you're going to make all prices go to zero, and you're going to end up in this world in which everything is free. You look over at your kids, and you're like, oh my god, if I don't do this, how shitty would it be for me to not do this for my future children?
If what Evan is saying is true, that scares me more than people purely interested in money. Say what you will about greedy people, their behavior can at least be controlled by losing or gaining money. That's something we can influence. People who believe they will build a utopia can't be controlled by anything except losing or gaining some idea of perfection that we can't influence. They are far more dangerous because anything can be justified to achieve perceived infinite value. Asking for permission, in their view, slows technological progress. Worse, it slows our chance at obtaining utopia. So might as well go forward with it before anyone can step in. I doubt all AI developers are like this, but it's a kind of mindset I find worrying and can allow normally moral people to commit heinous acts. Whatever the case, AI art is here, and that leaves the internet to adjust to it. The fact that art hosting websites like DeviantArt have not banned AI art, like Newgrounds for Affinity and Inkblot Art have, or at least put AI art into another part of the website or something, and instead created their own AI art generator service based on Stable Diffusion, is just one of those things that makes you think, what the hell were they thinking? The fact that ArtStation has also not banned AI art is unacceptable. They plan to implement a filter, but that only solves a little bit of the problem, which is the fact that AI art should not be flooding these websites in the first place. The reason I think this is fairly simple. Making art traditionally and using an AI are not the same thing. This is not a question of whether AI art is real art, as I believe that is a fruitless discussion at the moment. This is a question of how we define and categorize things. AI art should be discouraged for the same reason photography is discouraged. ArtStation is not an AI art community. It is a portfolio website for traditionally made art. I would like to highlight the unity of the ArtStation protests that started a few weeks ago, in which people have been posting a no AI logo and its variations, managing to completely cover the front page of the website in its early days, as well as users leaving the website altogether. It is impressive that artists have managed to take such a stand in this way, and if the resistance continues, we can hope that ArtStation and other art hosting websites will ban AI art. If there is another message to this video, then it's this. The person who uses half-truths, misinformation, obfuscation, and bullying to champion their pro-AI or their anti-AI cause is your enemy. I have seen so much outright theft, opportunistic endeavors, and things that just spit in the face of common decency come from the pro-AI side. I have also seen a lot of bad analogies from the art community that fundamentally misunderstand how these AI systems work, as well as people falling for some pretty obvious trolling when you learn how AI art is generated, and it saddens me because I believe the art community is smarter than that. These emotional appeals may get more attention, but they ultimately spread misinformation and make you look stupid. I implore people to learn what is actually going on. In the long run, getting the correct information can only help you. If you want things to get better, find organized movements that know what they're talking about and support them. I believe AI art is the beginning of the end. What it will end, I'm still not so sure. Will it end art altogether? Will it end just some sections of the art industry? Will it end just the small, tedious, and annoying parts of making art? Or maybe, will it end itself? Will this be the turning point where people say enough is enough, band together, and stop the tech sphere from expanding any further? I do not know, but it will end something. It is a new, very capable technology with power we have just begun to tap into. If we are going to play with fire, we better be careful not to get burned. In the next part, I will be exploring more of these questions, the art of these AI models themselves, as well as more ethical and legal issues. You know, I wasn't planning on making more Doomer videos after the last one, but let me just say, it gets worse.